Hello and welcome to Craft with Sarah. In this video we're going to be making this gorgeous shadow box with a 3D layered monogram letter inside. The first thing you'll need to do is to go and get a letter. So if you haven't already got an SVG file that you want to work with, I've put a link to my Etsy shop in the description below this video, and I've got the whole alphabet available in there if you want to go and find one. Alternatively, you could design your own in Cricut Design Space. I have another video which teaches how to do that, and again I'll put the link below this one in the description if you want to go and design your own letter first. But once you've got an SVG, we're ready to jump straight into Design Space and open it up and get started on making our gorgeous shadow box. When you download the SVGs, they'll come in a zip folder. You can't upload this directly to Design Space. You need to unzip it first to get at all the files that are hiding inside of the zip folder. I'm going to go through how to do this on a Windows computer, but I'll include instructions below the video on how to do it on a Mac and also how to do it on a phone or tablet. And if you're on a phone or tablet, you might need to install an app to be able to unzip the folder. Okay, so on a Windows PC, I'm just going to right click on the zip folder and then click Extract All and then Extract. So you can see that's made another folder here, and this time the icon looks different. It doesn't have that zip going down it. So if I just double click into here, you can see the files that are inside. There's lots of different types of cutting file for different types of machine. The one that we're going to use is the one that says SVG. So now you've unzipped your folder, you're ready to open up Cricut Design Space. Click on New Project at the top to open a new screen. We're going to click on the Upload icon and then Upload Image. Now you can either drag and drop your file or click Browse to find it on your computer. So if I drag and drop, so we want the one that has SVG in the name. And I'm just going to click over, wait for it to go green, and then let go. So you can see this has found the letter for me, so I'm just going to go ahead and click Save button on the bottom right. This has added the A letter to my recently uploaded images along the bottom, so if I click that, it will get a green border, and then I can click Insert Images on the bottom right. Now by default this is going to load really small, so we need to make it bigger because this wouldn't be able to cut at the size that it is. Near the top of the screen you've got a width and a height box. Now all of these layers in the letter are grouped, which means you don't need to resize them individually, you just need to do it once and they'll all change size. So I wouldn't recommend going any smaller than 5 inches tall, because some of the cuts on the layers are quite intricate and small, and if you go any smaller than 5 inches, your Cricut machine will struggle. For this example, I'm going to do the width, and I'm going to go 6.5 inches wide. And then if you hit enter on your keyboard, you can see the height automatically changes as well to keep that A in proportion. Now if you'd have changed the size, and it hadn't stayed in proportion, so you can see there it got wider but it didn't get taller, it means that your little padlock icon is open. So I'm just going to undo that to put it back. So when you're resizing you need to make sure the padlock is closed, otherwise it won't resize in proportion. Okay, so that's nearly ready to cut, but one thing I will suggest to make it easier is to choose your layer colours before you start, and then just go through and change the colours of the layers in Design Space to match the colours you're going to cut them. It just makes it easier because after you hit make it usually mixes the layers up in the wrong order, so it can be a little bit tricky to work out which one you need to cut out of which colour. So changing the colour first makes that easier. So to change the colour, click on the layer, and then on the top bar click the icon of the coloured square and it will let you change the colour. So I'm going to do every other one in red. I'm going to alternate red and white. So I'm just going to go through and change my layer colours to match the paper that I'm actually going to use. Okay, so now I'm ready to cut. So I'm going to click the Make It button on the top right of the screen. And that's separated it all out into mats for me. By default, Cricut would try and cut on 12 by 12 inch paper. I don't actually have that, so I'm going to change it to A4 on all of them. Okay, so you can use whichever paper you want. Now, I'm not quite sure why this happens. It might just be my design space, or it might be everyone's design space. I really don't know. But it only shows me 5 mats down the left-hand side. And this project is actually 6 mats. Okay, so actually I'm going to do an easier way to do that. I'm going to hit cancel here, and then I'm just going to go through and hide all the layers apart from the top one by clicking the little eye. So now I've just got one layer, hit Make It. I'm going to cut this one, and then I'm going to put all the other ones back and cut those, and that way I'll know which ones I've done a little bit easier. Okay, so we are ready to go, so click continue. Okay, so I've turned my Cricut on and it's now recognised it. I'm using 160 GSM cardstock, which is quite lightweight. I'm going to click medium cardstock, and that always seems to work well for me. So once you've chosen the paper type, you just need to load your fine point blade into your Maker or whatever it is you're using on your Explore, and then just follow the instructions on screen to get the first layer of your letter cut. For these letters, I use a light grip mat, which is the pale blue one. You might need a green one, which is the standard grip. It depends how thick your card is and how sticky your mats are. So to put your card on, get your sheet, and then we're going to line it up with the grid on the top left. So line it up there and then stick it down. And because these letters are intricate, we need to make sure that the card is stuck down really well. So get a scraper tool or a brayer, which is kind of like a wheel, a bit like a lint roller, but it's not sticky, it's just a wheel motion. And just go down the whole sheet, pressing it down. Make sure you get all of the edges. I mean, just making sure that that piece of card is really stuck down, so that when the Cricut machine is cutting through all those nice little flourishes, it's not going to start coming away from the mat. Once you've cut the first layer of the letter, yours will probably say finish because you'll have actually cut it. I haven't, I'm just doing a demo for you here. So I'm going to click cancel and yes, but you can click finish on yours. And then it will go back to this screen, so we're going to click cancel. And now it'll take us back to our original project. So we've cut this top layer. So in the right hand side now, we can untick that top one and then make sure we put the eye back on the other ones just by clicking it with our mouse. And now we've got 5 of our 6 layers showing, so that when we hit Make It, all of them will appear. So I'm going to change my paper to A5. And now I'm ready to cut the rest of the layers out following the colours of the card that I've already selected on the screen. Because the edges of the letters are quite delicate, you need to be careful when taking them off the mat. The easiest way to do it is to take the mat off of the card rather than the other way around, and that will stop your card from rolling up. So first, I'm just going to gently take the outside of the card off the mat, because we don't need to worry about that coming off nicely. We can just rip that off. But then I've got all this card at the bottom that wasn't used as part of the cut, which I want to keep because I might use that for a different project. Now if I just ripped that off like this and pulled it, it would start to bend and warp out of shape, and then I wouldn't be able to use it in the future. So what I'm going to do instead is turn my mat over, and I'm just going to bend it backwards and then carefully hold the bottom part of the card and just pull that mat away bending it as I go. And then it'll come off, there we go, nicely. So you can see this bottom bit, it hasn't warped, it's all nice and straight still. Okay, so we're going to use that same technique to take the A letter off of the mat. So you can see mine's starting to come off a little bit in the middle already because my mat's actually not very sticky. I could do with re-sticking it. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn my mat over, and then as I start to just bend the mat backwards, you can see the letter is just naturally popping off. And there are a couple of places, like with this leaf here, where I just need to get my nail underneath it, or you could use a weeding tool and just gently hold the letter, making sure you get all of the little bits and pieces so that you're pulling the mat off of the letter rather than the other way around. So make sure you don't actually fold your mat because you might snap it. We're just gently bending it. Now if I turn it the other way over, you can see that it is all nicely off in one piece. And now for all the little excess bits of card, you can just poke them out and move them away. So if you've got some bits that are being a little bit stubborn, just get your weeding tool and poke them through. And because they're all cut out, you'll just be able to gently move them away from your main letter. Okay, so for slightly bigger bits, you can probably just use your fingers just to gently move it away from the A. So I've just got two more little bits. There we go. So be careful when you're doing it that you don't accidentally bend any of the letter. And make sure you pay attention to get all these little bits out, because they'll be a lot harder to remove once you've started sticking. And just one more here. Okay, so there we have our A letter, and because we rolled the mat off, it's all nice and flat against our surface, which is going to make it easier to stick to the other layers. But what do you do about your mat? Because we've got all of this excess card still stuck to it. Now I find that the easiest thing to do is just to take my Cricut scraper tool and just gently scrape all those pieces off. You don't want to press too hard because you don't want to accidentally take any of the sticky off your mat. So it's more of a gentle scrape, and for bigger bits you might want to use your fingers to just peel them off. And just gently scrape them until all the bits are off. And then your mat is ready to load up with the next sheet of card so that you can cut the next layer of the letter. Once you've got all 6 layers of the letter cut out, we can start assembling. We need to make sure that we stick everything on in the right order, because otherwise it's really hard to take it off once you've started. So the easiest way to do this is to start by just putting all of your layers one on top of the other to get them in the correct order. So we'll start with the bottom layer, and this is the one where the whole letter has been filled in, so there's no gaps in the actual letter shape. The next one to add on, we'll have these diagonal lines across it. So those only happen on layer 5. So if you spot the lines, you'll know that's the one to put on next. The next one we need is layer 4, and this will be one which has got swirls on it. So you can see you've got, if I put my hand underneath, you've got flourishes along the bottom. So I'm going to add the flourish ones on there, and you can see as I'm adding them how the different colours are going to build up. The next one will be one, it doesn't have the flourishes, and you'll see that it's more filled in on the leaves than the other layers that you've got left. So we're going to add that one on. There we go. And then number 5. So this is the one, it will have leaves along the edges and the letter, but it will be quite delicate and dainty. So we're going to add that one on the top. And then finally, the top layer is just the outline of the letter. So I can layer that one on there. And depending on the letter that you're doing, it might have an extra bit to go in the middle as well. So that's our 6 layers all ready for us to assemble. And now, so that we can assemble, I'm going to carefully pick it all up in one go and just turn it over and put it off to one side. So it's upside down now. And that means I can take the very bottom layer and then the next layer, and I can get ready to assemble it. Okay, so if I move that one out the way for a minute, you need to put your foam pads on the bottom of the layer that you're sticking. So I'm going to be sticking this white one to this red one, so the foam pads go on the bottom of the white one. I'm using these Hunky Dory 3D foam pads. They're quite big, so I'm going to have to cut them smaller. You can buy smaller ones, but at the moment there weren't any in stock, so I bought these ones. So these ones are 2mm deep, which means I'm going to get nice depth when I layer up all of the different layers of the letter. You can get ones that are less deep if you don't want as much 3D effect, or ones that are deeper. But if you're going for ones more than 2mm and you're planning on framing your letter, then you need to just make sure that it will still fit in your frame. Okay, so I'm just going to open these up. If I just peel one of these off, these foam pads are huge, so we need to make them smaller. So to do that, simply get a pair of scissors and you just need to cut them. So I'm going to cut them lengthways first and then just cut them into little squares. It makes lots of mess. Okay, so now I've got lots to keep me going. You might need to cut them even smaller still when you get to some of the top layers, as they're really thin, especially if you cut your letter quite small. But this is fine for now. So I'm peeling the bottom layer off the foam pad, and then I'm just going to stick a few onto my letter. You don't need to go crazy and put them everywhere, but you do want to make sure that it will have enough support that one, it will stay stuck to the one you're sticking it to, and 2, that it's enough so that when all the other layers are stuck on top, it's not going to sag in the middle or anything like that. So just make sure that you've got a few nicely spaced everywhere. If you see a really big gap that doesn't have one, just add one in there. So I'm probably going to put about 10 pieces onto this layer. And as I go, I'm peeling, or I've peeled the top layer off of some of them and not all of them. Just go through and do that. And I'm going to do just a couple more. Make sure I've got some over here on this leaf because that's a little bit thin and delicate, so I'm just going to cut this one smaller. Be careful if you start cutting the foam pads once you've taken part of the backing off, because you can end up with sticky bits all over your scissors, so definitely don't use your best pair of scissors to do that. Okay, so that's enough foam pads on there. I'm going to take my bottom layer back and move those out the way. I'm going to turn this over and I need to line it up and then stick it down. So I find the easiest way to line it up is by using the bottom of the letter as a guide. So I'm going to line up the bottom of the white with the red underneath. And then just make sure as it goes up that it's still aligned everywhere. So I've just gently placed it on for now. I haven't pushed it down, and that means if I needed to, I could take it off again and reposition it. Once you're happy with the positioning, just press it down, gently press to make all those foam pads stick. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward until I have done some more layers. I'm nearly done assembling my letter now. I've just got the top two to go. So I thought I'd show you this one, which is the last coloured layer, so the last red one that I'm using, just to show you how small you have to cut the foam pads as you move up your letter. So some of these are so small, they're just a couple of millimeters in size, but that's how small you need to cut them to make sure that they're not going to overlap. You don't want to put the foam pads over the edge, otherwise you're going to see them once you've stuck it down. So I'm just going to attach this one. You can see the layers coming through already. Just add this one on there, line it up. So I'm still lining it up along the bottom, but also making sure that the outline of the letter is lined up as well. And then just push down to stick it. So we've got one layer left, which is the outline of the letter itself. Now you could add foam pads to this one and make it even taller, but I like to stick this one on with glue, and the main reason for that is it's just so thin that cutting foam pads that small scares me a little bit. So glue is much easier. And also I think gluing this layer gives it a bit more of an oomph effect. You know, it stands out more, giving the frame to the actual letter and letting all of the leaves and everything stand out from the background. So I'm just going to turn it upside down, and I'm using tacky glue. You can also use art glitter glue, which doesn't actually have glitter in it, it's just a name, or PVA glue, or whatever glue you want. I wouldn't recommend hot glue because you've just got such a small area that you'd probably end up going over the edge. So I've shaken my glue up because it tends to settle a bit, and all I'm doing is adding the tiniest little dabs along the edge of the letter. You need such a small amount with this to get it to stick. And you don't want to add big dollops of glue because then when you stick it on, you'll get the glue seep out the sides, which won't look very pretty. So just little tiny dabs all the way around the edge, and then bring your letter back in. So I'm going to carefully pick this up and turn it over, and then gently place it over and just kind of let it fall, lining up as you go. And then when you're happy with the alignment, gently press it down. You don't want to put your hands on and do the whole thing because that glue will just seep out and look messy. So we're just gently tapping to make sure that it will adhere, but without adding too much pressure. And then because this is an A with a bit in the middle as well, I just need to do it one more time. So add the same little bits of glue to the back of the bit of card, turn it over and stick it to the middle of your A. The nice thing about using glue like this is that you do get a bit of wiggle room to move it about if you haven't quite lined it up. Okay, so there is our letter A all finished. If I turn it over, you can hopefully see all of those different layers building it up. And that's what makes this lovely 3D effect on our letter. Now you could leave it like that. So to put it on a wall, you could either add some blue tack, or you could add a little picture hook, or perhaps Velcro if you're putting it up somewhere, however you want to attach it. But what you can also do is put it in a box frame, and that's what we're going to be doing for the rest of this video. So we're going to put it in a frame, and we're going to use our Cricut machine to cut a nice edging for our frame as well. And to do that, we first need to find out the size of the frame. Grab your frame. So this is a white box frame. Normally when you buy them, they'll have a bit of paper in the front with what it is, but I'm reusing this one from another craft project, so it doesn't have that. So to find out the size, turn it over and take out the backing. And then if yours has got a bit of paper in that goes all the way to the edge, you can measure that. But because mine doesn't, I'm just going to take out the spacer and measure that one. So I've got my ruler, and you can either do it in centimetres or inches. I'm going to do it in inches. So, oops, I just realised you can't actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so just measure from one edge of the spacer or the bit of paper to the other. So mine is 8.5 inches, and that's how big I will need to make my frame in Design Space. So let's switch back over to there and make our mat. We're going to create a pretty paper frame to sit inside the box frame to make our letter stand out a little bit better. So to do this, go back into Design Space and then either click Finish or Cancel to go back to your main screen. Now I don't need the letters to appear anymore because we've already cut it. So where it says in the layers palette, you've got the eye right at the top. Click on that one to hide it, and that means that it's still there in the background, but it's not going to be cut again. So we're going to make a frame. I'm using one from Cricut Access, but if you don't want to use one of those, then you could just use a square shape instead. So I'm going to search for square and see what comes up. And the reason I'm searching is that I want a nice pretty edge to the frame rather than just a standard square. But if you'd prefer a standard square, then you can go ahead and do that. So that one's quite nice. I might use that one. Oh, actually, I think I'm going to use that one. Okay, so I'm just going to unselect that one. So this is the one that I'm using. If I look at it here, the reference number, if you want to use the exact same one, is M46553, and it's called Close to My Heart from Art Booking. So all you need to do to insert it is just click it so it gets this green frame, and then insert images. We need to size this so that it's the exact size of the measurement we took from our box frame earlier. So in my case, it was 8.5 inches. Make sure your little padlock is locked so that it's going to change size in proportion if you're using a square frame. But if you're using a rectangular frame, you'll need to unlock the padlock so that you can put each length in individually. So 8.5 in there, and that has resized that for me. So I'm going to cut this outline in white because I think that'll look nice against the white in the letter itself. But I want to add a coloured paper to the middle. So to do this, go down to Shapes and click Square. I'm going to position this on top of the frame and drag the size out to make it bigger. Now I want to make it so big that it covers all of the gaps, all of these white bits, but I don't want to make it the exact same size as the blue frame. And that's because when I stick it together, I'm going to stick the blue frame on top of this one. And if they're both exactly the same size, it means you've got to line it up exactly on every single side. Otherwise it won't fit in your frame, and that can be a little bit tricky. So by making your coloured piece of paper a bit smaller, it's just a clever little hack to make it easier to frame, and I'll show you how to do that in the next step. Okay, so I've got my two shapes, And now I can go ahead and cut them. So just click Make It. And you'll see that because we hid the letter layers, they're not appearing. So we've just got our square and the frame. So go ahead and cut those out, and then we will assemble our frame in the next step. Once you've cut out the background for the frame, you'll have it on your mat and you'll need to take it off. Now, just like we did with the letters, if we were to just peel this off from the corner, the paper's all going to roll up and then it's not going to work for what we need it to do. So instead, turn the mat over and then just gently roll it backwards and bend it and hold the paper down so that you're pulling the mat off of the paper and not the other way around. You see the back of my paper's got this nice pretty bunny rabbit pattern on, but I'm using this one. So that's all completely flat, which is exactly what we need. And I've also cut the top bit as well, so it's ready to stick together. So I'm going to turn it over and I need to stick my paper to the mat. And you can see now this is why we made the square a little bit smaller, so that we don't have to worry about getting these edges lined up exactly right. We can just stick it over, and as long as it is over the holes in the corners, it's going to look great. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my tacky glue again and just put some little bits of glue around the edge. So I know that the blue card will cover all of these little circles, so I'm going to put it over there, and then I'm just going to go down quite close to the edge because the blue card isn't an awful lot bigger than the hole in the white card, so I don't want to put glue where the blue card is not going to appear. And just like before, I'm only using a tiny little bit. That's all you need. And there we go. So that should be plenty. Put the lid on. And now I'm going to stick my blue card over. And because of the sizing we did, we don't need to be accurate with this at all. So you don't need to worry about getting it straight, as long as it covers all of the holes in the white card, which that does. Okay, so I'm going to gently push it down, but not too much because I don't want that glue peering out the other side. And then I'm going to turn it over, and look at that, that looks great. I've got a little bit of glue coming out here. I'm just going to run my fingernail along. It does dry clear anyway, but it's nice to just get rid of it if you can see any appearing. Now it's ready for us to add our letter. My A is going to sit nicely in the middle, and I'm going to glue it on. So you could use double-sided tape, or however you want to do it really. You could put Velcro on each side and Velcro on in case you want to remove it another time, but mine's going to be stuck down forever. So I'm just putting some glue on the back here. You want to use a little bit more this time because this letter is quite heavy with all of the layers of card and the foam pads. So I am putting a bit more on and making sure it's all got some, and all of these swirls and flourishes. Just putting the glue on. So I am putting more on, but I'm not completely flooding it, because if you put too much on and the card gets too wet, you might start to see it through, which we don't want. But luckily the layers do kind of prevent a lot of that from happening. Okay, so there's our glue. Let's put the lid back on. Turn this over carefully without getting glue all over my hands. and then choose where I want it to go and just gently place it down. And then before you press it, you can wiggle it about a bit to make sure it's exactly where you want it to go. Let me move mine up slightly. And then when you're happy with how it's looking, just gently push it down. So we're being nice and gentle so that glue doesn't all come bursting over the edges. But we just need to make sure that that bottom layer is firmly stuck to our mat. Okay, now I would thoroughly recommend letting that dry completely before you put it in your frame, because if you put it in the frame straight away and hang it up and your glue's wet, your letter is likely to just slide down out of the way. So we're going to let it dry, and whilst it's doing that, I'm going to add some bling, because I'm a great believer that bling makes everything better. So I've got these little sticky gemstones. I've got red ones on the end which match the red that I cut the letter from. And I'm just going to stick some of these along the edges. Oops. Going to stick it to my fingers apparently. Just going to stick some of these along the edges of the white frame. Now I've added the gemstones on all the corners. Look how pretty that is with that little bit of sparkle. My letter has dried, so now it's ready to go into the frame. So take your box frame and remove everything in there apart from the spacer. We want to keep that in. Now if you're framing this for real, I'd recommend cleaning the glass first on both sides. So I normally use some glass cleaner like Windoline or Windex and a microfiber cloth, and just carefully spray a little bit on and wipe it with that microfiber cloth to get all the smudges and dust off, because it's amazing how quickly these wooden frames pick up dust, and you don't want to frame your letter, turn it round and spot a great big smear on it. And then once you've cleaned it, be careful not to touch it with your fingers as much as possible, otherwise you'll smudge it again. Okay, so we've got the glass in the frame, we've got the spacer, I've got my letter. I'm going to turn it upside down and then just carefully place it on top of the spacer. And look how perfectly sized that is because we measured it earlier. I'm going to take the back of the frame, make sure the framing bit is at the top, and then put that in on top. There we go. Make sure it's pushed in. And then, so on this frame, it seals with these little metal bits. So just push them all down. There we go. So there you have it, your finished framed mandala letter, all ready to go up on your wall. I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel for more Cricut videos just like this one. Don't forget, if you want to have a go at designing your own letters in Design Space, check out my other videos because I've got one on there which tells you how to do just that. Thank you for watching. Bye.